Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar in a series of sustainability webinars that are being jointly hosted by Stonnington City Council and Glen City Council. So I'm Bruce Payton. I'm the coordinator of climate emergency at Glen City Council. And Becca, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Beck. I am a Sustainable Environment Officer with the City of Stonnington.
Thank you. So before we go any further, I'll acknowledge the traditional owners, the land in which we meet. So I personally am Wurundjeri country. I know that many of you will be on Wurundjeri country or Boonwurrung country, and also potentially country of other First Nations people, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. I will say we were having a little chat before the webinar a little bit about the Welcome to Country and how to make it kind of really alive and sort of personal. And I do remember something that was done at a forum I went to that had traditional owners a little while ago, which I found really powerful. So I thought I might actually just briefly share it, which is that we shared the information about the current season. So we're now currently in the cooler season of late summer, which runs from February to mid-March. And this is the description. This is actually been put together after a lot of consultation with the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung traditional owners. It said, after the hot, dry summer, the autumn rains have arrived and the days are becoming cooler. People started burning those parts of the land where the scrub or tussock grass have become too dense during the summer, but they're advised by their elders when and where to burn, taking the weather into account so the fires do not spread too far. It was important to clear the undergrowth and provide fertilising ash so the small tuberous food plants could grow well after the rains came in March. Burning also made it easier to catch animals. Plants which had suffered from lack of water during the summer were now able to renew growth. Jack, wattle gum was plentiful. In the middle of the month, the Warwick, Banksia or honeysuckle longleaf box and silverleaf stringybark came into blossom, providing sweet nectar and attracting birds. March has been called the eel season because the female short-finned eels are moving down the streams to the sea. The male eels have been leaving in smaller numbers during the spring and summer. These are an important food, and among the vegetables, there were the starchy roots of the water plants, which began to die down after this summer growth. Some late summer fruits, such as mistletoe berries, were also available. Birds started to flock before heading north for the winter to be replaced by other birds, which will soon start to arrive from Tasmania. So that was sort of put together by people who speak traditional owners, and we can share. We'll share in the links a little bit just where that came from, but I found that sort of really powerful. So Mick Harris is a solar and energy efficiency designer and installer. He has 40 years experience and he's the owner of Enviro Group. He's a former president and general manager of Renew, and he founded Renew magazine and the International Projects Group, which installed more than 1,000 solar systems in East Timor. He recently completed an electrical apprenticeship, is now an A-grade electrician with certification in solar PV, battery systems, off-grid systems and air conditioning. So thank you very much, Mick, for joining us, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Bruce, and welcome everyone to the webinar tonight. It's always a funny thing, webinars, because there's huge numbers of you out there and I can't see anyone. I'm just talking to the screen. So anyhow, I'll try to make this as informative as possible. As it said in the introduction, I've been doing this for a long time. I installed my first solar power system in a little town called Walhalla in Gippsland. Some of you might have been there, little gold mining town. And I put that in 1980, so I was doing it for a long time. And then, as you can see, I'm not young anymore, but I went off and did an apprenticeship 5 years ago and became an electrician, because in this game, you really, to have access to all the knowledge and all of the tickets you need to do whatever you want, you need to have the right qualification, and that's an electrician. So I did that at a rather advanced age. Anyhow, so I've been doing it a long time and I hope to pass on my knowledge. I used to work at Renew providing technical advice for about 14 years. So my job there was to talk to people such as you who had individual questions about all sorts of things, and I used to give advice and unbiased technical advice. And now I'm in the industry as well, so I can give an insight as far as the way it's working from the side of the people who actually put the stuff in. I think at this stage we should go to the presentation and we can work through it, and then we'll have time for questions afterwards. So I am going to share my screen and pull up the presentation. Now, before we start off, some of you will already have solar. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you put it in ages ago. You think of refreshing the system. Some of you won't have solar and you've seen all these panels going up on people's houses and you've thought, oh, I don't know about those. They look a bit ugly or whatever. But you've thought, well, now it's about time. I need to take it seriously. And so here you are. You've come along to this to learn more about solar. So we'll go through the basics, and so you understand how it all works, how it goes together, what it costs, and so on. So these are the areas we're going to cover. Why solar? How does it work? Solar rebates and feed-in tariffs. So, how do you get these discounts that are around? Getting the most out of your solar, batteries, and buying a solar system. So that's what we're covering. Okay, well, first of all, there's you can do a bit of homework in terms of making sure your electricity pricing is good. And there are a range of resources. So before you even get to the solar, looking at your electricity costs is a good thing to do and trying to get them down. Because, for most of us, the key reason to get solar is to cut costs. There's environmental benefits as well. That's good. But saving a bit of money is helpful. So one of them, of course, is the Victorian Energy Compare website, which is a Victorian government site. And you can see the web address there. And you can go on there. You can look at different offers. You can look at different information. It'll give you information about how to save energy as well. You can see in the little yellow box up the top there's a energy saving hint. So that's a good resource. Just one word of warning. When you're looking at contracts or electricity contracts, there's always the risk that they'll give you a really cheap electricity rate, but maybe the supply charge will be more, or maybe something else. Now, this Energy Compare website actually takes those into account. So it actually looks at the different bits of the bill and gives you information on what is the best value overall. But nevertheless, with electricity suppliers and gas suppliers, they may change their pricing down the track or something else might happen. So you've always got to take, I think, contracts for electricity buying with a grain of salt. Having said that, if you don't like what they're doing to you 2 years down the track, you can exit and do something else. Let's look at the next slide. This is another good website to have a look at, where you can shop around for a better deal, whatever. It's a trusted commercial site. It's got, you can filter by ranking on green credentials. So if you really want a lot of green power, then you can make that a priority. Alternatively, if that's not so important to you, you can focus on cost or whatever. There's a limit to green power offers is one of the things you can do. So that's one of the ways that you can sort and adjust the search when you're looking. It can estimate the value of adding solar and battery as well. So, it can look, if you put on 5 kilowatts of solar, what might you save? And so that's just another good resource that you can have. And you can see you can compare electricity or gas and gives you a range of options. Let's go to the next one. Using energy more efficiently. Aha. I've been doing some work for the Eira Council at the moment. Looking at houses that really need some love. And I've been up in roofs where there's no insulation. You can see down the bottom there's insulation down the bottom. Roofs that don't have any insulation leak heat and cold. So even though you could put solar on, or you could put an air conditioner in a room, say that's cold or warm, having the basics right in terms of getting rid of the worst of the drafts and making sure you've got some insulation is really important. So don't forget that. It's housekeeping. It's like the old thing of if you've got a bucket with a hole in it and you don't deal with the hole, you can shove a lot of water in, but it's still going to leak. So make sure your house doesn't leak if possible, and that will make life easier and your energy bills lower. Okay, so why solar? Okay, well, there's a heap of solar panels on those roofs, isn't there? So someone must have done a special deal. Why solar? Well, let's keep going. Sustainability. Solar PV has direct environmental benefits. If you're using power from the sun, you're not using power from the coal-fired generators down in the Latrobe Valley, which pump out a lot of CO2 and other nasty stuff, or from gas-fired generators that also are not good for the environment. The solar electricity you use the solar electricity you use replaces grid power, reducing emissions. So in other words, sun is shining down on the roof, electricity is coming in, comes into your house wiring, and instead of you sucking electricity out of the poles and wires out on the street, you're sucking electricity out of that solar panels. And those solar panels once you've got them, the electricity costs nothing. So that's a good thing. So daytime electricity is free after you've got this set up. The energy used to make your solar panels is paid back within the first 2 years. So this used to be a big thing that people would come up with. They'd say, well, and there was a kind of false rumour that, a bit of information that went around for years was that the amount of electricity or energy you needed to make solar panels is more than they ever produced. That was never really true. Maybe back when NASA had a few panels on a satellite in the 1960s, but that's about it. So the energy that solar panels produce, they pay for the energy that's used to produce them in less than 2 years. So that's good to know. Economics. Direct financial benefits. The solar energy you use replaces energy you would otherwise have bought from your retailer. That's what we were saying before. So instead of buying power from the retailer who might want to charge you 25 or 30 cents a kilowatt hour, you're getting solar for free. It's great if you've got an electric vehicle and you can charge during the day. You effectively eliminate your petrol bill. But of course, the same applies with your home in terms of your energy bills. The solar energy you don't use is exported and your retailer pays for it. So you get a little bit these days, not a lot, but you get a little bit given to you by your electricity retailer. It's only about 3 cents, but it's something. And so that's a good thing. You get some money back from them, even though it's not a lot. The payback period. So the payback period is a term that describes, okay, you spend, $4,000 on some solar panels. How long will it take for you to get $4,000 back? And typically, depending on the house, small house, 5 to 9 years for a small house with low electricity usage. If you've got a larger house, it can take 4 to 7 years. If you've got high electricity usage, and the return on investment, which is, I think, a great one to focus on, 15 to 25%. Now, what do you get from the bank if you put some money in the bank? It's not much. I don't know, what is it, 5%, something like that, 4%? I'm sure some of you out there are going, oh, no, it's less than that, or it's more than that, or I'm doing whatever. But anyhow, so you're getting 15 to 25% back from your investment in solar. So really, that's better than shares. It's better than money in the bank. It's great, up to 25%. So good thing. So economically, solar's really good. And that's driven a lot of people to get it who normally wouldn't think about, being green. This is a great graph. So this shows the price, how it's come down over the years. So solar PV prices have recently levelled out after a long downward trend, but are expected to drop further as the uptake grows and technology improves. So I've been around this area for a long time. I remember when we were installing solar panel systems about 14 years ago, you would pay about $13,000 for 1.5 kilowatts. Let's look at the next slide, actually. This is a great story. So think about that. 1.5 kilowatts used to cost about $13,000, a bit over 10 years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, something like that. These days, and you can see Melbourne in the column there, 3,810 for 3 kilowatts. So we're talking 3 kilowatts is double 1.5. If 1.5 cost about 13 grand, that means 10 years, probably 12, 13 years ago, it was costing about 23,000. It's now 3,800. Can you believe that? It's just incredible. And the other thing that this graph doesn't show, Australia is just about the cheapest place in the world to install solar on a house. In many overseas countries, the cost of installing solar on houses is about double. We've got a really competitive market. People are really enthusiastic about it. So, you go to America, you probably pay, $8,000 for something that costs us $3,800. So it's really a good deal. It's really cheap, and it's lovely. It is interesting to look at the other states. You can see that with all of those, the average across Australia, and I'm just looking at the 3 kilowatt column because it's easy, 4,100. So we're cheaper than the average across all the country, all of the states. And in fact, we're cheaper than most of the states. Brisbane is a touch cheaper and Perth is a bit cheaper. but really, you know, we do very well. One question that might come to your mind, because 3 kilowatt is what I'm talking about at the moment. These days, people are putting in much bigger systems because if you look at it, if you want to put in something 3 times the cost of our 3 kilowatt system, so 10 kilowatt, that's over 3 times the cost, that's only about double the cost. So 7,860 instead of 3,800, and you go from getting 3 kilowatts of electricity to 10, you can see as you put more in, it gets cheaper per kilowatt. So you get better value for money. So people these days tend to be maxing out their roofs. They're also maxing out their roofs because they're thinking, well, maybe I'll go electrify everything. Maybe I'll get an induction cooktop instead of my gas. Maybe it's time to get aircon, so we have heating and cooling instead of the gas heater, and maybe an electric vehicle. And so if you're thinking of all of those things, the more electricity you got, it's just there. Whenever the sun's shining, it's free. Let's keep going. Slow down on solar. Solar photovoltaics generates electricity, but not hot water. Okay. Yeah, so you can see those panels on that roof. They've kind of got that bluey colour. So yeah, they're electricity panels, not hot water panels. So people used to get a bit confused about that, but it's important to point out. 1 in 3 Australian homes have solar PV. In Victoria, 43% of homes that are suitable for solar have it. So it's a lot of houses. Most solar households are getting good return on their dollars. Not many have batteries, but 1 in 7 new solar installations has batteries. So batteries are coming up as well. Let's keep going. Okay, how does solar work? Well, there's some solar panels sitting on a roof with an evaporative aircon unit. Here's a nice little picture. Let's have a look. You can see a picture of a solar panel with the sun's rays beaming down onto it. So solar panels produce electricity. They have silicon chips inside them, very big silicon chips that are configured in such a way that they can take photons of light and produce electricity. Typical solar panels produce about 40 volts. That's not really something you've got to worry about, but it's something that designers think about. And it's DC, not AC. So DC is what you get in a torch battery or a car battery or a mobile phone battery. AC is what you get coming out of your PowerPoint. So anyhow, so solar comes in through the solar panels. Where's it go then? Okay, it goes into this thing called an inverter, which is a box on the wall. The box on the wall makes the voltage and the type of electricity match what will go into your house. So it's like a converter. And you've got 1 solar panel there. Typically, you know, a system might have 10 solar panels. So 10 solar panels, 10 times 40 volts means you get 400 volts. Now, what electricity voltage have you got in your PowerPoints at home? Some of you will be going, yes, I know. It's 230. So the 400 on your roof won't go in. You plug that in, you'll have sparks and excitement. You don't want that. So you've got to go through this inverter, which converts the solar voltage and the DC electricity into 230 volts AC, which is exactly what you need in your house. And after it's gone from the inverter, it goes into your switchboard. Now, your switchboard is basically a place where all the wires in your house, plus the wires from the street, come in and they all connect together. And there's some switches, some isolators. They're not a bit more complicated than switches, but we'll call them switches. In there for, your lights and for your PowerPoints, and then there might be a separate one for your stove or whatever. So the electricity goes in, the wires go in and mix in with the electricity mixes in with the wires and all the stuff in your house. And if you're using electricity, the electricity will flow through the wires in your house and provide electricity to those appliances. If you're not using much electricity and you have a heap of solar coming in, the surplus, what hasn't been sucked up in the appliances in your house, will then go out into the street. And you get paid your small amount of money for that. So let's look at the next one. Energy consumption. Yes, there we are. So that's what we were talking about, wasn't it? Solar comes in, goes down the wires to the box on the wall called the inverter, goes over to the switchboard where all the wires mix in together, and then it gets sucked out through the wires into your TV and your other appliances and gets used there. Let's keep going. And there's the grid. So, of course, sunny day, you're not using much electricity. What you're not using goes out into the street, helps power other people's homes, helps power the shops down to the local shopping centre, local schools, whatever. So it's doing good things. Even though they don't pay you a lot for it, it is doing good things. Okay, so rebates and feed-in tariffs. Okay, there's a few of these and they can get a bit confusing, but let's have a go. Okay, so the Victorian government's got some rebates. For solar PV, they'll pay $1,400 of the cost of your system. You have to have an income of less than $210,000. Your home has to be less than $3 million. You have to have no existing solar, and the house has to be available for rentals. So there's a few things there. So you can't automatically get it, but most people do get it. They also have interest-free loans, another $1,400. When you see those ads on TV or online or whatever where they're talking about solar for some ridiculous tiny amount of money, what they've done is they've maxed out the rebates. They've assumed you'll get the $1,400. They've assumed you'll get the loan of $1,400, which you still have to pay back. So the very cheap offers are a little bit deceptive because they assume everything, all the best case in every case. So just be aware of that. There are also rebates available for hot water systems and interest-free loans for batteries. And if you go to solar.vic.gov.au, there's information on all those there. So then there's the feed-in tariffs. So the feed-in tariffs is when you feed power back out to the grid, what do you get paid for it? So whenever solar generation your house doesn't use is fed back into the grid as much as the network can handle, and you will be paid for it. Your unsold solar energy is exported to the grid and used by your neighbours. Your energy retailer gets credited for it by the energy market system. So they pay you for it, and the price is known as the feed-in tariff. Usually the price is based on what they would have to pay to buy electricity on the wholesale market. Sometimes you get a better deal, sometimes you get a worse deal, so shop around. The feed-in tariff is usually given as a credit on your electricity bill. So you end up with an extra line on your energy bill and, you see a credit there. It won't be huge these days, but there's something. There's another rebate that I'll mention called STC, Small Technology Certificates. It's a federal government rebate. So what they do is they want to give you some benefits for producing electricity. And so they did a calculation to work out what is the value, the environmental value that comes from you not putting pollution out into the atmosphere because you're not using coal-fired electricity. And they came up with this thing called Small Technology Certificates. This is another rebate. It is based on the amount of solar you put in. The inverter size or battery size or things like that don't make any difference. It's simply the amount of solar panels. And of course, the way designers tend to design systems, they max out the amount of solar panels that are possible with a particular inverter, because that way they can maximise the rebate and reduce the costs for you. Now, all of these rebates, you don't have to stress over them, because if you buy solar from someone, they will automatically apply the rebates for you. So they'll be itemised, but they apply for them. They do the stuff the government wants. They do the paperwork, and you just pay less. So that $3,800 we were looking at, it was probably after STCs, those particular rebates. So it might be that solar system is more like a $5,000 system, but it had, over $1,000 worth of rebates, which were automatically applied. This is a bit more on the feed-in tariffs. So the old feed-in tariffs used to pay a lot of money, like 66 cents a kilowatt hour. And some of you who are looking at upgrading your system might have got one of those systems. And if you did, you've probably been really happy with it. But the 66 cents expired, 3 or 4 months ago. So now people who were getting quite a big credit on their bill aren't getting a big credit anymore. So, it's not a bad time to look at your system and think, well, is it time to upgrade that? And most of the rebates we've talked about still apply, so you can get them if your system's, I think, over 10 years old. Previous feed-in tariff schemes paid for the premium price, a premium price for the electricity exported. This was to encourage the uptake of PV prices. Wind PV prices were very high and systems were small. Remember, 1.5 kilowatts 13 years ago, $13,000. Now you get something double the size for less than 4,000. So you can see, they needed to have strong encouragement in the past. Don't need to now. As the solar market grew, the systems dropped in price. Premium feed-in tariffs were phased out. And, you can see a bit there in the drawing, the diagram. You can see the premium feed-in tariff, the transitional feed-in tariff, the standard feed-in tariff, and then, the regulated ones, and you can see the numbers going down. And you can see currently it's about 3.3 cents that you get paid. Some energy retailers will offer higher ones, but be careful because they might have a higher feed-in tariff, but they might also charge more in their rates. So you might think, I'm getting a really good feed-in tariff, I'm getting 10 cents. But if they're charging you 35 cents a kilowatt hour for your electricity, it may actually be a worse deal. So good to be careful. Export limits. Okay, so what is happening? There is now so much solar on the grid on a sunny day in autumn and spring where people are not running heating and cooling and not using much electricity, and the solar is pumping because, it's sunny, it's nice, it's lovely weather. The grid can get too much solar. And the voltage, that voltage thing I was talking about, which is normally 230 volts in your PowerPoint, can go up. It might go to 235, could even go to 240. If it goes too high, it can start to damage your appliances. So you can't do that. You can't have that happening. And there's regulations around what those voltages need to be and how far they can vary from the 230 above and below. So the managers of the grid had to work out what they could do, and they introduced an export limit. So that means that they don't want you to put more than 5 kilowatts back into the grid. So it's like a fixed speed limit on a road. Annual impact is low for a typical size system. So a lot of the times they're happy to have your electricity. They welcome it, they need it. But there's just some particular times when they don't need it. And then it's useful for them to have that 5 kilowatt limit just to keep it a bit more under control. There is another thing that's come in the last month or two, which is being very annoying to a lot of people, and that's called the emergency backstop. And it's good for you to know about this. The emergency backstop is where the electricity distributor, so there's a range of electricity distributors around Victoria and around Melbourne. They do the poles and wires, basically, and the meters, that kind of thing. They don't sell you the electricity, but they build the infrastructure out there in the street. They have introduced, in conjunction with the government and the regulators and so on, this emergency backstop thing. What the emergency backstop is, that every inverter that goes in now has to have a connection to the internet. So they can remotely log into your inverter and have a look at it. Now, you can do that as well. It's rather good because, you can look at your inverter and say, I'm producing heaps of power today. That's great. Or you could have a look, and if something's wrong, you could say, there's nothing coming out, so I better call the people who put it in. But what the emergency backstop means is if that voltage on the grid gets too high, it's getting up there, getting the limits, they can actually go into your inverter and tell your inverter to reduce the amount of power that it feeds back to the grid. So this is in addition to the 5 kilowatts we've seen. It's an additional control that they wanted to have. Now, once again, with a bit of luck, this should only really hit autumn and spring. No heating's going, no cooling's going, and there's heaps of sun. that's the time it would be likely to happen. Where it's really been annoying is getting these things set up. The distributors have been caught flat-footed. They're not doing a good job at implementing this emergency backstop thing. And their rule is that if it's not set up properly, they will cut your export to the grid back to 0.5 kilowatt. So what they'll do, until they're happy that all the forms have been filled in and all the boxes have been ticked and everything's been tested, they actually log into your inverter individually and test it to make sure it complies with the rules. So for some people who've put their solar in recently, when the distributors have been making mistakes with their paperwork, they have been able to export and they're saying, well, what's wrong with my solar? It's hardly producing anything. And it's actually fine. It's this emergency backstop has locked down the inverter and stopped it feeding much power out to the grid until it's sorted out. So, there's a lot of solar businesses in the state absolutely furious with this because, they've spent a lot of time trying to get everyone going and customers are annoyed and the solar guys are annoyed. Anyhow, it'll get sorted out, and it does make sense because, the wonderful thing about all these controls is it means that there will be more solar on the grid, and it means that there will be less energy we need to get from brown coal and from gas and other things that create pollution. So that's the emergency backstop. Frequently asked questions. Ooh, these are good. Panel tilt. So people used to worry about panel tilt. Right back in the days when I did that system in Walhalla that I was telling you about, in Gippsland, off-grid systems, you want to have the panel angle quite steep because you're trying to get as much solar in as you can in winter. And because that's when you don't have much sun. In summer, when the sun's higher in the sky and the sun's coming down like that, you've got heaps of solar. But if you're off the grid, you've got no grid to back you up, you want to maximise your minimum. But that's only for off-grid. Now, we're all in the city, we're not off-grid. So the optimum for us is around between about 20 and 30 degrees. So, which is pretty typical of your roof angle. Most roof angles are fine. These days, it's not very often that we put tilts on to raise the panels up and change the angle. Most roof angles are okay. They're in that range. Some can be a little bit over 30, 35, something like that, 37, some of the inner suburban ones. But the newer houses tend to be in the 20 to 30 degree range. So tilt is not an issue. Panel orientation is interesting. So it used to be we'd face everything north because that's where you get the most sun. But, we don't all have a lot of room on our roofs facing north. So what happens if you put your panels on the west? Well, if you put your panels on the west, you lose maybe 10, 15%, depending on the angle of the roof. That's still not too bad. The panels are cheap. Does it really matter if I lose 10 or 15%? If you've got them on the west, it's kind of good because on days like today, the sun doesn't set till 8 o'clock. You're still getting power from those west-facing panels when you've come home, cooking dinner, playing with the computer, watching TV, all that stuff. So having west-facing panels is really quite good because that powers your evening. East-facing panels aren't bad. They help you in the morning. So the panel orientation is not such an issue, but it does affect the design of the system. So you do have to think a bit about the way you design it and make sure that different directions, the voltage and the power comes out in different ways, different amounts of voltage and so on. So you have to have, there's these things on these inverters called maximum power point trackers. It's like a channel in a stereo system, So you can get inverters with 2 channels or 3 channels, we'll call it. And that means if you've got some facing west and some facing north and some facing east, you put some panels on each channel and each one is then optimized to whatever's happening with that group of panels. Cleaning's a good one. A lot of people don't bother to clean their panels for ages. The Clean Energy Council suggests your system should be serviced every 2 years. Panels do lose a bit of efficiency. Cleaning your panels, you can give them a spray with a hose from the ground. It doesn't hurt. Getting up on the roof, unless you're very good on roofs, is a bit of a tricky thing. You get, if your tin or your tile gets wet and you're standing up there and you slip, you really don't want to fall down and break your neck cleaning your solar panels. There are mobs that specialise in it. It's still a bit of a hairy kind of thing. So cleaning panels, maximum I'd say every 2 years. but you could leave it 4, you could leave it 6. If you've got a tile roof with lichen, the lichen crawls across onto the panels, and that can make a big difference. And then cleaning the lichen off is quite hard. So just depends on your individual situation. But as I said, some people don't clean their panels for 10 years. If I was to, I must admit the panels on my roof I haven't cleaned for ages. Because honestly, if you've got dirt on your panels, you might lose, as long as you don't have lichen, you might lose 5 or 10%. It might cost you, I don't know, $400 to get your panels cleaned. The electricity you're losing, 10% is probably less than that. So I would tend to wait until they're pretty bad to get them cleaned. Heritage restrictions can be an issue. If you've got a wonderful house with a slate roof or, it's a beautiful heritage place and it's facing the street, the council may not be happy with you to put solar up. So that is an issue. Then you want to look at the roof that faces away from the street or faces onto the neighbours. That can be a good way to still get solar without having to have a fight with the council. Will it work in a grid outage? Generally not. Generally not. These systems are designed so if the grid falls over, they automatically switch off. Now, the reason they do that, you've got some guy, Liney, out on the street with the cherry picker fixing up the power. If your solar's still on and feeding out to the street, he could get electrocuted and killed. So it's a very, very strict rule that the system must shut down when there's a grid outage. There are some small exceptions. Fronius is one of the more popular inverters made in Austria. They have an arrangement where you can have an emergency power point on your inverter. So if the grid drops out, you can have one power point which will supply up to the amount that the solar is producing. So power drops out, you've got your emergency power point, you don't want the fridge to defrost. Gemma has said the power might be out for 6 hours. You could run around, plug into that power point and with an extension lead and run your fridge or the computer or something else. If the cloud goes across and you're using a bit of power, you may not have enough power to keep running whatever you're running. But most solar power systems are, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kilowatts. Even if you're only getting half of that, that's more than enough to run a fridge or a computer or whatever. But of course, that won't work at night as well. So you'd only have that power during the day. It does cost a bit to put in one of those emergency power points. I reckon to get a good Clipsal unit, you're looking at over $150 plus the wiring cost. Getting a Sparky out, the call-out fees are generally $180. And then there's some time on top of that. So you can do the maths yourself. You're not going to get much change out of 400, I would think, if you wanted to go that way. But for some people, it might work. Does it shade my roof? A lot of people who put solar on their roofs say that the house is then cooler in summer because you've got an extra layer on top of the tin. You've got an air gap underneath about that wide. You can't, with my fingers, you probably can't tell, but that's 100 mil, something like that, 150 mil. So it does actually do that. So it's an advantage. End-of-life disposal. There are mobs that recycle them now. The aluminium around the edge is easily recyclable. The electrical cable is copper and easily recyclable. The glass and laminate is now getting munched up. There are systems coming online to recycle that as well. So a lot of it is recyclable and that will increase as more panels come to the ends of their lives. Let's keep going. Getting the most out of your solar. Woohoo. Okay, so this is talking about the time of day. So you can see the bottom axis, you've got AM, so that's maybe 6 in the morning where it starts, and then the sun rises at 7 or something like that, 7:30. You wake up, you turn on everything. You're cooking breakfast, you're listening to the radio, you've got other things going. So power's getting used. Then you go off to work if you're at work, or, you stop cooking and sit down and relax if you're retired. And the amount of energy you use drops. And then people get home from work and school, and then they use a heap of power until they go to bed. So that's typically what happens during the day. What happens with the solar? Woohoo! Well, here's the solar, and you can see it comes on maybe 8 o'clock. After you've already got up, you're maybe on your way off to work by then, and the solar's really starting to power up. And then it starts to drop back when you're coming home. So it's not well matched, is it? It means that during the day, when you're not using much power, the solar's being really helpful and eliminating all your electricity bills. But in the morning and evening, it's not. So what do you do about that? Well, one was to face some panels east and west. So you get, you broaden that yellow bump, make it a bit wider and a bit flatter. So that would help. But there are other things as well. So you maximise with the energy you use during the day. Use electricity when the sun is shining. Run appliances during the day manually or on automatic timers. Dishwashers, washing machines, clothes dryers, pool pumps, all that stuff. If you can have them set up so they run during the day, they will be running for free. Use your solar energy to heat water. That's a good way to do it. And of course, heat pump hot water systems are now becoming very common. They're very efficient and they're generally set up to charge up the hot water during the day when your solar's around. There are also other fancy devices like solar diverters and so on. Use solar energy to heat or cool your house today is a classic example. It got hot today. Even if you weren't at home today, I reckon the go would have been if you had solar, put the air conditioner on low, run it during the day. By the time you get home, the house is nice and cool and, it's cost you nothing to get that cooling. So, because it's run on the solar. So it's cost you nothing. So thinking about becoming all electric, yeah, well, that's all part of the picture. If the more electric loads you've got, the more advantage you can take of your solar. And an EV, of course, is a great way, and they're getting cheaper. There's one now, I think, coming out shortly. I think it's going to be about 29,000. Ooh, 29,000. Imagine that with no electricity bills because you can charge it during the day from solar. Well, no electricity bills, no few petrol bills. It's great. Really wonderful. Let's keep going. Batteries. Aha. Well, this is another way to deal with all those curves. Solar renewable energy for store renewable energy for later use. Well, that makes sense. Remember, we had heaps of solar in the middle of the day, but we weren't using much energy. So what you can do is you can put in a battery system, save money on bills by reducing peak consumption, tariff arbitrage, which is basically just taking advantage of the tariffs so that because you've got the batteries there so you can feed back to the grid potentially when you can get paid more from the grid people. That will be coming. Keep electricity on during grid blackouts, local grid issues, high voltage. It helps stabilise the grid, more energy independence, support development of new technology, and of course you can go off grid if you want to. In the city, most people don't do that because it's probably 40 or 50 grand. And you really need a generator, and the neighbours might not like that in winter. So let's start from the middle of the day. Plenty of solar, the sun is shining, you're running some appliances. You've got more solar than you need to run the appliances. The surplus electricity is then put into the battery. That fills up the battery. Once the battery is full, you've got all your appliances running on solar, you've got a full battery, then the surplus goes out to the grid. Okay? So and then you come home in the evening and you start to use energy. The sun starts to set. Initially, that sun is helping to run your appliances, but then when the sun's completely gone down, you don't want to pull power from the grid, because if you pull power from the grid, you're going to be charged 28 cents a kilowatt hour. It's very expensive. So instead of getting your power from the grid, you now start pulling the power from the battery. So you suck the power out of the battery. A lot of batteries these days are about 10 kilowatt hours. A lot of households use 10 to 20 kilowatt hours a day. So overnight, a house might use 10. And so you're now pulling power out of your battery, and so you're getting free electricity because the battery was charged by the sun, and you're getting free electricity to run your appliances. You go to bed, you go to sleep, you stop pulling power out of the battery, or maybe just pulling a little bit, to run a little things like the fridge. You get up the next morning, the battery's still got some power sitting in it, so you start sucking power out of the battery again. The battery is gradually going down, and then the sun starts to rise again. So you're now sucking power out of the battery and out of the solar panels. You then go off to work, your consumption drops down, and now you've got plenty of electricity because the sun's up. You're using that electricity to run your house, and you're using that electricity to charge the battery. So that's the cycle that you go through every day. Surplus power during the day, charge up the battery, use that power in the evening and in the morning, and then charge the battery up again. Okay. Battery pitfalls to avoid. Okay, some batteries don't have blackout backup. So the one I just described to you is simply designed to power your house in the evening and in the morning from the stored solar during the day. Some of them will also have systems which allow you to back up part of the house or the whole house. So that means that, say it's a typical day, the power drops out. Now, remember your solar power system would normally drop out when there's a grid failure. A lot of the systems, the solar will keep going and keep feeding the battery, and the battery will then feed power back into your house through an inverter, another one of the inverters, different from the other one. And that then means you can power your house even though the grid is off. So you need to know, do you have blackout issues, or do you like that security of not needing that security of having power potentially if the grid falls over, then you can specify that in your system, get it designed to do that. Insufficient capacity for that battery backup. A lot of the cheap battery systems have got tiny little batteries. You do not want a tiny little battery. It's like solar. A tiny little battery is much more expensive per unit of battery storage. A bigger battery will give you better value for money. So most people come in at around 10 kilowatts of battery storage. And remember, if your household's using 15 to 20, and half of that is in the evening, morning and overnight, then 10 kilowatts should just about see you through the evening. Grid connection hassles, inverter limit, we've talked about that a bit. Location problems, the Australian standards, there's all these rules around batteries. Solar batteries are virtually never catch fire. They're not like those scooters that go up in flames and you hear lithium batteries have gone up. I don't know of any solar battery fires in Australia at all. They're incredibly safe. They're very well designed, and there's a lot of rules around them. You have to have a non-flammable surface behind them, like that tin shed you can see there. You've got to have sufficient distances from windows and living areas. There's a whole lot of rules around them. You have to have bollards. If you put them in the garage, you've got to have a bollard in front. Poor battery warranty allows steep degradation. Well, you want a good warranty, so you always look at the warranties. And, look at your warranties too. One trick that used to be played by some players in the industry was they would say, okay, you've got a 5-year warranty, but you've got to have the system serviced, every year. And, of course, they charge you a fortune to service it. If you didn't service it, sorry, your warranty's void. So just have to watch those particular issues. Battery information resources. Renew magazine is good. So Renew is the mob I used to work for. Not-for-profit organisation. They do great things. The CEC approved battery list. That has some useful information, but it's also got a very long list of very scary batteries. So solar quotes. They have tables of battery specs. They've got quite a lot of good information on their website, Solar Quotes. And battery price benchmark, Solar Choice. A lot of the online resources tend to underestimate the costs of things a bit. I think it's because they average pricing out, where you've got the cheap guys who don't do a very good job, and then you've got the better guys, so they come up with an average, which is a little bit low for a good quality system. Virtual power plants and other uses. Virtual power plants can enable you to be paid to allow your battery to be used by an energy business for an agreed amount of time. It's likely that in the future there will be further opportunities to earn money from your battery capacity to support the community or the wider energy systems. The government would like us to have batteries. I believe the feds are just announcing a battery rebate, the Labor government. They but they want to be able to do this thing where they can control your battery. It's like the inverter. They want to be able to log in, and when the battery voltage is low on the grid, there's not enough power, they want to be able to buy some of that back from you. Now, it could be quite profitable for you. If they buy it back from you for 20 or 30 cents, woohoo, and you've got that energy for nothing because you had surplus during the day, it could be quite profitable for you to sell some of that back. But you would keep enough. You might only decide you want to sell 20%. So you keep the rest, so you've got plenty to get you through the night as well. Buying a solar system or battery system. Okay, how much per year do you want to spend on energy? It's good to look at your energy bills, but it's also good to take into account the fact that you're probably going to get more electrical appliances in the future. What are your reasons for getting solar or batteries? What are your priorities? Save money, environment, reliability, something else? So you need to consider all of those kinds of things. Good providers will talk them through. Hey, if you ever get any high-pressure salespeople in solar and batteries, just get rid of them, go away from them, because there are good solar mobs out there that won't pressure you. How best do I figure out how much solar or battery I need? There's a range of resources you can see there. SA Government, Solar Victoria Solar Hub, New Energy Tech Consumer Guide, Choice, Solar Quotes, and so on. And there's also battery and solar and battery calculators, so you can work it all out. But as I said, most people tend to go about 10 kilowatts with 10 kilowatt hours of battery capacity, and with solar they tend to go, they fit whatever they can. Okay, solar and battery retailers and installers, they manage the whole deal. Approved resellers are good. There's all these extra codes of behaviour with the New Energy Tech Consumer Code. So, the more stamps they've got like that, the better. Solar and battery installers, some subcontracted or employed by retailers. Okay, so there's solar installers who are Sparkies, and there's solar installers which are marketing companies. They use outsourced warehouses, they use outsourced installers, they buy their leads, they aren't very good. If you can get someone who's actually got some in-house Sparkies, that's a good thing. They're more likely to be around for a good period of time, and they're more likely to have some depth of knowledge and answer your phone, because probably they're doing more than just solar. Let's keep going. How do I choose a retailer? NTCC approved sellers, good starting point. Retailers have signed the Code of Conduct, newenergytech.org.au. Victorian Solar authorised retailers. That's another good group to look at, solarvic.gov.au. You can go to that website. Word of mouth, I think, is a really good one. Talk to friends and neighbours, and find who's used who. Check warranties. Well, as I said before, check the warranties. Get multiple quotes. I've got to make a comment. The business I'm in, we don't use solar quotes or solar choice. We find it's a race to the bottom with price. And we like to spend a lot of time with people, and we're not the cheapest, but we've been around for 20 years. And a lot of the companies that use solar quotes, they don't have a reputation. They haven't been around for a long time, and they sell on price. But if you can buy from a company that sells on reputation and history, or word of mouth, referrals from others, that's a good thing. So, ask around. And do your homework. Tips to minimise cowboy risks. When dealing with retailer, ideally site visit prior to quote. But rare nowadays, not always. I know we almost always do site visits. How do they vet subcontractors? You could ask them that. Do they take full responsibility? Well, you'd want them to, wouldn't you? Quote is clear on panels, inverters, battery replacement, etc. Communicate with the installer doing the job. Are they accredited with the CEC? They better be. Will they be present at key times of the job? That's something they're meant to be. CEC approved installers, the actual person with the ticket is meant to be on site. Brand and model of panel, battery and inverter, that's all important. Placement as expected, cable routes, you want to make sure you get what you asked for and you get what you were promised. And once the job's finished, they should explain the system to you. They should set up the monitoring. They should give you an owner's manual and documentation and all that kind of thing. warranties. Performance warranty, typically an allowable reduction in performance over a warranty period, at least 80% for 25 years. So solar panels have these two warranties, which makes it confusing. They have a performance warranty because they gradually drop off in performance. So you don't want something that's going to drop off in performance really quickly, but still work. Because someone could sell you something, it's still working after 3 years, but it's only producing a tiny bit of power. That's no good. So you've got a performance warranty, and then you've got a workmanship warranty as well. And that used to be around 10 years. Now it's gone up, and a lot of them, they're the same now. So the workmanship is that, something won't fall off the solar panel. It's been put together properly. So anyhow, the warranties are getting pretty good these days. With batteries, 60 to 80% over 10 years of the batteries. The installation warranty, it's good if you get someone with a good installation warranty. The reputable installers tend to have an installation warranty from 5 to 10 years. If it's anything less than 5 years, I don't think it's very good. So, make sure the installation warranty is good. How do batteries work? Oh, we've got to go quicker, I think. Okay, so you can see the solar's coming in. It normally just goes to an inverter. It goes out to your switchboard, but in this case, it goes to the battery, inverter, and a battery. So there's actually two inverters when you put in a battery system, because your batteries typically might be 48 volts, and you can't put that in to a 230-volt power point. It'll blow up. So you've got to go with, you've got to increase the voltage from the battery of, say, 48 volts up to 230, whereas your solar inverter, remember, it might have been 40 volts per panel times 10 panels, so 400 volts. You've got to go down with the solar inverter from 400 volts to 240. So I think we're about to go over to questions.
Yes, we are. So thank you very much, Mick, for that. That was really, really interesting. And as both somebody who works sort of in the sustainability space and as somebody who has solar panels on their roof, I've sort of noted down a few of the kind of tips and thoughts, especially I think about how to use, make the most use of our solar panels. We do have a question in the Q&A, so we'll ask that in a second. If anybody else has any questions, now is a really good time to put them in while we have the opportunity to ask Mick. I will just mention one other program that you may not actually be aware of, Mick, because it's sort of a program that there's some councils involved in, including both Glen and Stonnington, which does help address that issue of kind of credibility and getting a decent kind of installer, which is called the Solar Savers program. So I'll drop, oops, sorry, I just did that for the Just Listen panelists, which is not useful to everyone. Here we go, try that again. I just dropped in the chat the web address for that. So it's a program that we're part of. It's actually kind of a multi-council program that's managed through the councils, where basically it is specifically designed to address that issue. So you can get an obligation-free quote, you can get put in touch with an accredited installer who can then kind of give you more information on what you can do. And we have put, through this program, a lot of effort into making sure that those, installers are accredited to make sure we sort of avoid those particular issues, which we know happen. So I spoke to a friend today who had literally that issue. So with someone just turning up at his doorstep and trying to sell on the solar panels. So having said all of that, I will go to we now have two questions. Hooray. Oh, no, it's one question. No, it's just just credit. So this one's from Anonymous NTD. So thank you, Anonymous. The question is, thanks for the great talk, Mick. Just wondering, after a solar system has been installed, what are some ways that I can check if it's been installed correctly, given kind of the issues with installers out there?
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd do is I'd go out and have a good look at it, see if it's neat. So where it can be messy and nasty and horrible is around the inverter. So if you go outside and it doesn't look neat and tidy, that's not a good thing. It's hard to tell the quality of the installation on the roof. One of the things that some people don't do so well is clip the cables up under the panels. So if you're lucky enough to be able to see under the panels, look under and see if that's nice and tidy. Otherwise, look at the conduit, make sure it's all neat and tidy. You should have a manual. You should have them talking to you when the system's finished to explain it all to you. And you should be able to log into the monitoring. With the emergency backstop, it may not be producing anything much at first. So remember that, because that's annoying. You log in and it's doing nothing. Not working, but it could be the backstop hasn't happened yet. But yeah, look for it to be tidy. Look around and see if they cleaned up properly as well. If they left your place in a mess, it's not a good sign. If they tidied up properly, that probably says something about the quality of them as tradies, in terms of the quality of their work. But it's certainly worth, if you do have concerns, it's worth chasing up quickly, because the longer you leave it, the harder it is to get things sorted. So, yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you. That's really good advice. I don't think we're getting additional questions yet, so I will take advantage to ask a question of my own, which I've been dying to ask a solar expert for a long period of time. So I'm not sure how common this situation is, but we purchased a house about 3 years ago. It already had solar panels on the roof plus a solar water system. So the roof is kind of pretty much taken up. So we'd like to do additional solar panels. But we do have space in our yard that is just not being used for anything. So is it possible? I know I've seen on like farms, people have solar panels at ground level, but is that something that's doable in a city?
Yeah, sure. I've got some in my front yard. I thought that'd be a bit of fun. You can do ground mount systems. The cable that goes to the solar panels has to be buried 1/2 metre under the ground. So you've got to dig a pretty big ditch. There are particular ground mount systems, like there's these big screws that you can screw down into the ground, or piles that can be rammed down. There's interesting ones like a tripod that have come out now, which are quite good. So 3 legs that go down onto a mounting plate. So you can do it. Most solar installers will say, "Oh no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that," and that's probably because they don't know how to do it. So it technically can be done. Financially, it's going to cost more, and finding someone who will do it will be tricky. But yeah, it can be done if you want the fun of it. You just need to find someone who's willing to engage with the fun, really.
Thank you. We'll have a little look around.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, I'll just jump in with something else. If anyone's got any other questions about electrification, like I'm happy to talk about heat pump hot waters, induction stoves, air cons, and if you need a switchboard upgrade, which is a really relevant thing with solar, because you now have to have a lot more room on your switchboard. And so if anyone's got any questions about those slightly more general electrical issues, I'm happy to talk about those as well.
Thank you. So yes. Oh, we have one. The question is, when should we look at replacing our solar panels or solar systems?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a great question because I hate throwing out things that work. And solar panels can work a very, very long time. So, a lot of the people who had the premium feed-in tariff, they put in their system 13 years ago. They've been very happy with it. They've got 1.5 or 2 kilowatts. They could now fit 6 kilowatts on their roof, 8 kilowatts on their roof. But they still work, and you don't want to throw out things that work. It's a really hard one, but, it does get to the point where, if the panels are recycled properly, maybe it is time after they've been in for a long time to upgrade. Sometimes you can find a home for them. Sometimes people might buy them for a little off-grid system, a shack in the country. You could put them on a camper van. You could put them on a shed in the backyard. But even that is not that attractive because the panels that were being put in, 10, 12, 13 years ago were about 195 watts, maybe 160 watts. The panels today are 450. So they're hugely more powerful. So even if you put them on a camper van, let's say, well, you could have twice as much power on the camper van in the same amount of real estate. Or the same with the shed or whatever. So, the technology is so wonderful and it's moved so fast that it is one thing that is probably worth retiring at some stage. And, I think maybe after 10 years, maybe after 12 years, you might want to think about, retiring the panels and doing an upgrade because, you can have a lot more energy and it could be good.
Thank you. And I think, that's a really interesting sort of thought. We've got another question, sort of similar, which says, how, and I presume I hope I'm reading this right, how do you know when you need to upgrade your switchboard?
No, that's a good question. Excellent question, person who asked that. Okay, so let's think about a switchboard. So a switchboard, if you are going to add extra things, if you want to add a solar panel system in now, because of the backstop and all the other rules, you've got to have a meter on the switchboard, which takes 2 slots. And then you've got to have an isolator switch. That's 3 slots for your solar. If you want to put in an induction cooktop, you need 1 slot, maybe 2, if you're going to an electric oven. So let's say you had gas oven and so on. So you might need 2 slots there. If you want to put in an EV charger, you need a slot there, even though you might be able to run it off a PowerPoint if you're happy to trickle charge it. If you want to put in an air conditioner over about 5 kilowatts, you need a slot. So if, let's say, you wanted to electrify, that's 3 for the solar, another one for an aircon, another one for a cooker, another one for an EV. You need 6 slots. If you want to put in a battery system, you need even more. Most switchboards have 1 or 2 spare slots. Sometimes you can reorganise the switchboard a bit, so you can consolidate some of the circuits, change some of the so you can take the safety switch out, which takes 2 poles. There might be a few of them. You can swap them for things called RCBOs, so you can get some extra space that way. But if you don't have much room and you want to electrify, chances is you might need a switchboard upgrade. And the next question is, how much does it cost? 12-pole switchboard upgrade, maybe 1,400, maybe 1,200. It depends. It's probably likely to be in that range between 1,000 and 2,000 to do a switchboard upgrade. And then, there are other questions like, do you need 3-phase and all that stuff? But that's for another webinar.
Oh, thank you. I will say, by the way, I know this is what you meant, Mick, but just for clarification, obviously when you're saying you can mess with your switchboard, a registered electrician can mess with your switchboard. I have this nightmare scenario of someone going, Mick told me I could take out the safety.
No. For God's sake, don't do that. Don't stick your finger in there. It bites.
Cool, right, so thank you for that. Okay, I've got another question. It says, hey, would I be able to look at how much my solar system is generating, and would I be able to look at it on my inverter?
Yes, you can. Inverters typically all have apps associated with them. So you put an app on your phone and you can look at what your inverter's doing. Easy. Sometimes you can also have them set up so you can see the energy consumption of the house. So generally it's the information on the power production. There is additional information you can get in some circumstances with some extra wiring as well.
We've got a few minutes left, so there are a couple of things that Beck and I are going to say kind of to wrap up at the end, in addition to sort of thanking everyone again and just a bit more information. But this is kind of your last chance, so we start doing the wrap up to ask that burning question you might have. I will ask Mick, just, now you've done your presentation, was there anything else that you sort of has popped into your head that you would like to share, or you think we've kind of got everything?
Look, I reckon it's information overload at this stage, isn't it? So, people, you can have a look at this webinar again if you want to get more information. And there's lots of information online, and good, installers will give you information as well. And the council has heaps of information and solar savers and programs like that. So the information's out there, and I hope everyone enjoys their journey.
Thank you, and thank you for that great segue, Mick, because I was just about to mention the resources we have. So I'll hand over to Beck in a second, and she can talk a bit more about Stonnington's resources. But from the Glen Eira perspective, we have a Sustainable Living web page called Sustainable Living Glen Eira. So that'll be dropped into, I think we've got that ready to drop into the chat soon before we finish, which basically has links to a vast variety of information on solar, energy, other things you can do. You can also sign up to our regular, thank you very much, just got dropped in the chat, monthly sustainability newsletter. So that goes out and has lots of information, including about events like this, but also about other opportunities and things that are going on, and just all sorts of events, things going on like this. I will mention one other thing which is not directly related to this topic, but which I think you will hopefully find interesting and is really relevant to the broader climate change topic. which is that you may have heard or noticed if you live in Glen Eira that we are currently redeveloping our climate strategy and a bunch of other strategies. So if you go to the website is called Have Your Say Glen Eira, so I will drop that into the chat. There is actually a survey that is open for the next week and a bit, which basically is on all of these different plan strategies we're developing. So to give you a bit of a peek behind the curtain of what we're doing, certainly I can tell you for our climate strategy, we are very consciously not coming into this with presupposed ideas of what the actions we should be taking are. Sorry, I've just lost my video camera. There I am again. We are waiting to see what input we get, and we're sort of kind of look at drawing out the themes and what sort of things, and we're obviously having a lot of conversations with a whole range of different people, but there's definitely the opportunity to provide kind of your thoughts and input. And this strategy, we are looking to this to last probably the next 6 years in terms of climate strategy. And it's going to hopefully be put in front of the councillors for their endorsement in about September, October. So this period of time in the next few months, and especially while this survey is open, is really critical for deciding kind of the next few years and sort of beyond that in terms of what we do. So really encourage you to have your say. And that's not just our strategy. As I mentioned, there's a bunch of other plans and strategies, including our council plan, which is the master document for what council does over the next 4 years. So just everything I just said about climate change, just replicate that for everything else we also do. So this is a really good opportunity for you really to have your say in what our council will be doing. And I know Stonnington is also doing some development, but I know that in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of how to do it, that survey is the best way for you to interact. Beck, I might just hand pass over to you if you're happy for me to do so.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks very much, Mick, and everyone for coming along tonight. I just wanted to mention again Solar Savers, which Bruce mentioned earlier. Stonnington also has an additional incentive if you're living in an apartment and you're interested in installing solar. So check out that link that was posted earlier. The other things from us are also, like Mick mentioned, Sustainable House Day. We're a partner this year, so we're really excited to hopefully have some local homes open. That's on Sunday, the 4th of May, which is coming up. And just more generally around sort of electrification and energy efficiency, we have free home energy kits available in all of our local libraries, and it has a thermal imaging camera, PowerMate device, and a thermometer, as well as a little booklet that runs you through, I think, about 8 tests that you can do in your home to check for the efficiency of various and variety of different appliances. So there's currently no wait list, so I'm sort of spruiking that again because it's been sort of 18 months of them being booked out. So if you're interested and you're a Stonnington Library member, if you pop in Towards Zero Home Energy Efficiency Kit, and it'll come up. Otherwise, I think we're going to pop the link in the chat as well. Yeah, there it is. That's about it for me.
Well, thank you. And you want to forget something? We also have those kits now, likewise. So that was a similar thing. But you can see we also do, as you probably guess, we do a lot of work together, and sort of the councils kind of inspire what we do in our region. So look, thank you very much, everyone. We're really grateful, especially obviously thank you to Mick, thank you to Renew, thank you from Erin to Beck for Stonnington for involvement in this, and thank you to all of you who've attended for being part of this. And one thing certainly I do really like about this is you get the questions which always prompt things that are always really relevant, but usually we haven't thought of. So thank you very much for that. And good luck with your sustainable journey.
Thanks, everyone.